Hi, this is Ralpha Rosa. I'm setting up for my book launch. Let me see if people join. Just waiting to see if people join. Just one moment. In the meantime, please go to Amazon.com and download your version of The Wonder of Sex, a Discoverative View, second edition, to follow along with this live event. Okay, so this is my live book launch. My name is Ralpha Rosa Eustache. I live in North Carolina, and I'm an author. I wrote the book The Wonder of Sex, a Discoverative View, second edition. It's book 2 because I have a series. I have book 1, which is just The Wonder of Sex, a Discoverative View. And the second edition is Sex and Society. Okay, so I chose to write about sex because it's an interesting topic. I wanted to see where that topic would lead me because the book is more research and discovery as I wrote. And so I discovered that it's a real marvel. It brings pleasure to mankind. People don't want to die before they have sex. They want that experience because everyone talks about it. It's pleasureful. It's between a man and a woman, and everyone wants to have that bond, share that special bond, that intimate bond. And it does bring great pleasure. It bonds people in love, and it's very intimate. It is a marvel because it pairs design with function. And so design, the pleasure, the blueprint itself, the pleasure that it brings, combined with function. There are 4 systems that come into play with sex, and that's the reproductive system, the cerebral system, the nervous system, and the vascular system. And they all work in harmony during sex. The vascular system rushes blood to the sexual organs. The brain and the nervous system work together, sending sensory messages one to the other. And so you have the great sensation that is felt. And there's the reproductive system that's working behind the scenes with signals sent to the seminal vesicle, the secretion membranes, and all of that, and the final outcome, an orgasm. So this is something that brings pleasure. There's an outcome. The product is reproduction. That's the whole intention. And with that, the whole earth is populated. And we mentioned bonding. There are stages that lead to sex, or that should come before sex. I wanted to read from my excerpt from my book, and the stages that have to come before sex. And they show that it is not something instinctive. So this is attraction, eye contact, love, getting to know each other. And with attraction, it is so very selective, because you can be in a room of 10 people and be attracted to just one person out of the room, or maybe a handful. And the rest, you have nothing to offer them. There's no chemistry whatsoever. So attraction is very selective. And there's the eye contact that brings two people together, that affirms the attraction and that chemistry. And then love develops. And then getting to know each other, getting to know the deeper person, which could be before love, but still, it takes sitting down, understanding the person, seeing if you have things in common, and then after that, trust, and then intimacy, touch, and so forth, arousal, and so forth. So it shows that there's a design behind it, whereby love is at the forefront of the interaction. And so this calls to mind a healthy sex, which is different than the casual sex that is more and more common today, that is not intimate and that's lost its intimacy. So we see design here. We see that we're not byproducts of evolution because of these stages, and also the reproductive organs that man and woman have suggest that each species, even animals, we want to include those, each species has its own system to reproduce or procreate. And that did not come out of a soup, a Big Bang soup. It was designed. The systems that I mentioned showed a design and a function. And the outcome is not just mechanical. It leads to love and bonding, and it leads to families, people staying together, being attached to each other with love, that string of love and attachment. And so that is the product. So in men, the result of sex is that they actually feel this is where they feel their romance. They come to the woman, and she's their home, his home. And for women, attachment is formed, and that's why the women feel a little needy after sex. So it ties people together with a special ribbon. And that's why healthy sex is important, because you want to be tied to someone with an actual intimate bond, something that is solid. And so, which is different than a mainstream culture in casual sex. So why is that important? We'll talk about it a little later. Let me see if I can find another excerpt from my book. Okay, so we discussed this again. With sex, there's intent to bring pleasure. It creates bonding, and the purpose is reproduction. Of course, men and women decide if the desire is reproduction, if they want to have children, that is at their discretion when they come together and talk about it. I do want to mention something about sex. Very interestingly, sex sets its own criteria, and since it's a design, it is, it's not surprising. It sets its own criteria, and it's moral, emotional, and physical. And the negative implications come without talking, without sermon, without anything. They just come when sex is not used properly. And the result is unwanted pregnancies, broken families through infidelity. And with that, low-income families, juvenile delinquency, early drug addiction. They're the physical, sexually transmitted diseases. And the moral implication, of course, is, as we mentioned, that unwanted pregnancies, broken families. And so no one has to sermon. These are the outcomes. Surprisingly, we know a list of sexually transmitted diseases, and since the beginning of time, these have existed. So it's not surprising when sex is not used properly, everyone knows that an STD can be contracted. So these are the implications that are, without word, come into play. So it's very important to add value to your sex. And there are institutions such as marriage. Marriage is one institution where it is a safe haven, where you have people who've gone through the stages of coming together, man and woman, bonded, and it is the height of commitment between man and woman. And interestingly enough, when two people are married, it doesn't just grant them rights to each other, but it gives their children rights to their parents, which is really interesting because children, through marriage, have the right to live with both parents full time. When that marriage is broken, the children at this point lose their rights as well to live with each parent or one parent full time, and won't live with their parent full time or both parents full time until they die. So marriage grants rights to children as well. So it's important to add value to your sex and take advantage of a lasting, committed love that healthy sex brings when you go through all the right stages, meet that right person, are tied emotionally to the right person, and commit and gain exclusivity to the right person. Let me see if there's anything else. So this design helps us give credit where credit is due. And here's a quote. It says, "Sex is a reproductive activity that is a marvel. It combines the reproductive function in which a male and a female come together. Because of the complexity and all the necessary circumstances of what is required for two people to come together to have sex, it is conclusive that the act of sex should be credited to a designer. This points to a creation versus something that evolved within each species. All species, mammals have sex. Thus, giving thanks is needed for the wondrous activity that combines pleasure at a high passionate level. This sexual activity should be placed at high priority within two people who love and trust each other. Misuse of the sexual activity leads to distress and sickness. This points to a higher power with intentions of blessing man and woman with a special gift to create a lasting bond in their relationship. It shows how a function of reproduction is paired with gratification of sensuality at a high level in an act that rewards the two participants as the reproductive processes work. Knowledge is applied at its best in this process, and this is a perfectly engineered activity. God is the innovator in this process that brings pleasure to both people. In the Holy Scriptures, God's name is rendered Jehovah. Mankind would not be what it is without the pleasure that sex brings, because this is a process that is at work with the initial stages of love. The children of the earth are all byproducts of it and should give thanks. So giving thanks is really required. We don't want to give credit to evolution, where evolution is not able to accept the credit and the design, because it actually says that it was all an accident. So nothing about sex, the bonding, the stages, the exclusivity, the rights to each parent, the criteria that it requires, speaks about evolution. Let's see if there's anything else that I can find here, any other quote. Okay, so it says here, and so we have free reign over our bodies, so we feel, but there are outside influences and influencers with their views on sex that tell us how to maneuver the matter. We are told how to view the opposite sex and sex itself by the media, by our friends at school, or as we mature, the person we are dating and society. And somehow this is more powerful than our parents and even more powerful than what we want. How does society shape our views on sex, and how do we work our way around this? This book will look at the wonder of sex, its complex design, and sex in the framework of society, and the pleasure of sex. So sex in the framework of society. I talk about this in the book. Right now, in the 21st century, mainstream culture is driving a casual sex lifestyle. And this is something that is dominated by the Western world, where there are influencers, maybe the media, Hollywood, is showing an image of sex that is fantasized, where there are no repercussions at all to casual sex. There's no hurt, there's no effect to it. And so people are coaxed to jump in, but the results are the opposite. In 2018 alone, the CDC reported that 1 in 5 people had STDs on any given day. So we see that there are results to this casual sex lifestyle, but it's so popular that people who are dating are all expected, and this is a message that's received, to live out this lifestyle with a liberal view on sex. And it makes things difficult for those who actually want to wait, because the demand of the opposite sex may be different. The expectation may be different. So there's always, the question always comes up, when to have sex. When will it happen? And in the book I talk about this because it does create confusion, because some people do not want to engage in that. So how do you work your way around it? So let's see if there's anything else. Okay, so we talked about the stages that lead to sex. Sex and its stages. What drives the sex factor? There are stages that lead up to sex. These lead up to the males and the females coming together, and only these elements can prepare them for such an intimate and uninhibited sharing of themselves that sex requires. They are almost always present and necessary in healthy sex, so much so that these stages put to question that sex evolved. They point to other factors that make having sex something more complex than just performing the act. And we talked about what those stages were. So there is a coming together, there is knowing each other, and love should be a factor in sex. So it's more complex, and these are required, and trust is paramount. It's also required in healthy sex. So let's see. So what happens after sex? This is a excerpt from the book. It says, what happens after sex? There is an emotional strain that is created between the two people. On the female side, emotional attachment is formed, and she becomes more in her feminine, and emotionally she develops a neediness, so to speak, for her partner. On the male side, he has an emotional home to come to bond romantically through sex, which is his female partner. The male and the female form an attachment through sex. And so this is what happens after sex. Each is bonded to the other. The man finds this is where he demonstrates his romance. And for the woman, this is where she forms her attachment to the man, and that's why after sex, the women usually get needy after sex. So this is this string, this ribbon that ties the two together. And so the ideal thing is to be attached to the right person. And that's what healthy sex does. And so there are institutions such as marriage. And through marriage, this is where intimacy is created, because this is the height of commitment between a man and a woman. And this is where they've demonstrated before the world that they want to be with each other and exclusive toward each other. And they actually love each other. So that's one way that healthy sex works. It adds value to the relationship. And we talked about what rights marriage grants the children who are byproducts of relationship. It grants exclusivity to two people. So this is one factor in healthy sex. So let me see if there's anything else. And the book also talks about infidelity, because it's very curious that some people get married and they take it for granted that their partner will stay with them through their cheating. And the book talks about that. So what should a person do in a situation like that, or even before? So let me see if there's anything else. Okay, well, the book can be found on Amazon.com. You can download it free this week. And I do appreciate the time that you spent listening to me. And thank you very much for your support. And I do appreciate that. And I hope that you enjoy your reading, and also that you are tied with a beautiful ribbon to the right person. Have a good night.